I'm very grateful for our next speaker, that she was able to get here tonight, because she really represents the next generation, that generation of young people, of young Jewish Americans who feel passionately about social justice, who feel passionately, which is our Jewish value, about the rights of all people. And I'm very grateful that Arielle Klagsbrun, right, is here. I apologize that I didn't get your bio first, but I'm going to I'm going to ask you to kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, and also to speak from your heart about your feelings about Israel and Palestine. Please welcome Arielle.
I don't think I've been on a bima for a very long time. So thank you, Rabbi Susan, for creating this space for us. I think there's a lot of important conversations going on within the Jewish community right now at this really important time. And I think this is one of the first spaces that I've heard of that is doing this in a synagogue, so I'm really thankful and honored to be part of that. So my name's Arielle Klagsbrun, and I grew up in the Boston area. I grew up going to a conservative synagogue, and I didn't prepare anything, so I'm just going to talk about my experience, and I might get a little emotional, so excuse me. My father is a Holocaust survivor. My grandparents strongly identify as Holocaust survivors, and being raised in a Jewish community that was a Zionist household, that we still had the JNF, was very important in my family story. I have my aunt made Aliyah and lives in Tel Aviv along with two of my first cousins, and they chose to raise their families in Israel, and they've spent a lot of time in bomb shelters recently. And I think, my feelings towards Israel, I vividly remember being in, 4th or 5th grade, and I had an Israeli Hebrew school teacher who was, teaching us the map, or we were practicing drawing, and Jeff Goldstein, who I haven't talked to in probably 10 years, raised his hand and said, well, what about the Palestinians that were there? And I just remember my 4th grade mind being like, whoa, that is really crazy that he asked that. And the teacher freaked out at him. And I think there was something that was so visceral in her response, where she refused to have that conversation and she just kind of shut the door, that I remember making a mental note and saying, something's not right here. Like, there's a big question mark, and why would she have such a strong reaction if everything was fine? I grew up, I went to college, I started getting really involved in environmental organizing, and I work now as a community organizer at a economic and environmental justice group in St. Louis. And it was through my environmental organizing that I had strong values of social justice, and I was really deeply concerned about climate change, and I started working a lot in the St. Louis community, and started meeting people that were really active with Palestinian rights. And still in my head, probably even until 4 years ago, I couldn't engage in their fight totally. And I had big questions about it, and it felt really tense, and every time people were talking about, rights for Palestinians and, talking about Israel, I felt so complex about it, which I'm sure a lot of other young people in this room have felt, because I think many of us were raised in these social justice households. And I remember when, Peter Beinart wrote that piece that was about, the future of Israel, and it was about kind of my generation of young people that were raised with these strong social justice values, that are, out on the front lines fighting for racial equality or minimum wage or all those things, but then were feeling this nagging in their conscience around Israel and knowing that things were not right there. And I felt that really strongly, and I didn't know what to do with that, because I didn't grow up in a household where you could talk about that, because my cousin was on the front lines, fighting for the IDF. So my junior year of college, I chose to study abroad in Israel because I knew I had to see things for myself to understand them. And even though I had grown up going to Israel and visiting my family there, I really wanted to do it on my own terms as an adult. So I studied abroad at this program that was around environmental studies, but was bringing together Palestinians and Israelis and Jordanians and Americans. And I was like pretty deeply transformed from that experience and came out thinking that I could no longer support the state of Israel. I could no longer look at their actions and think they were okay. And I mean, that was mostly because of who I met there. And it was because, of the experience of my friend Tamer in East Jerusalem, who was shot in the throat for going to the Dome of the Rock at age 5. And it was because of Tamer's family, who had faced eviction multiple times. It was because of Bisan's family and her grandmother, who was just beat up by the IDF this past week. And I can hold the complexities. I can think about my aunt this past week in the bomb shelter, and the terror-filled emails she was writing. And every time I was hearing about rockets going towards Tel Aviv, I thought of her, and I thought of my concern for her and how scary that must be. But I also knew that what the Israeli government was doing is totally wrong, and it's killing people, in a massive amount. And we just can't cling to that anymore. We can't acknowledge that. We can't not acknowledge that. So like I said, I'm a community organizer, and there's, for folks that have ever been to organizing trainings, there's a whole lot in there about your self-interest and why you organize. And I was on that quest to figure out why I care about the things that I do. And then ultimately for me, after a lot of time and tears, came back to my family. And it came back to the oppression my family felt and having to leave Europe and being chased out by the Nazis and coming to the US and being very poor, and kind of the cycle of oppression that happens. And it feels very complex for that to be the motivating force behind everything that I do, and why I feel the need to speak out against Israel's actions. But I also think in some ways it's right, because even though the members of my family potentially don't agree with me, I think that these values that I am really proud of in the Jewish community, of people that always stand up to oppression and have learned this history and continue to pass down these values to their children, and tell the stories of the quote of, "We have to stand up for oppression wherever we see it, because when they come for you, nobody's going to be left." That's what I'm most proud of being part of this community. And I feel like for years I lost that because of how I felt about Israel, and because I couldn't find a group of people that agreed with me, and because if I broke my code of silence of saying anything, I would be kicked out of my community. And I feel really lucky that I've found people that are Jewish, that have the same social justice values, but also we can talk openly about these things. And I just there's for people that have grown up in this community of people that really fight passionately for a better world, we have to stop. We have to stop not saying anything about this. And we have to be okay with letting ourselves feel the internal turmoil that it will be for a lot of us, because in the end, I think we'll come out just a way more just community, and we'll come out understanding the complexities and the nuances within ourselves and within the world so much more. And I really hope this is a watershed moment for a lot of us. I've been really inspired to see how many people have been speaking out. Friends of mine, it's all on the social media, but friends of mine who have said, I'm an American Jew, and I've never said anything on this issue because I didn't want to alienate the people around me, and this is too much. We have to say something. I have to say that I don't agree with that, and I hope that people in this audience join that group of people that are willing to speak out, and I hope that if you're not ready to speak out, that you support the people in your family that do, and that you don't push them away, that you love them and honor them and realize that it was those values that made that person. And I really encourage anyone that would like to get involved and figure out how we support the Palestinian organizing that's happening in St. Louis to come talk to us afterwards.